Hi everyone, my name is Megan, although I know everyone here, so you all know that already. And I'm a senior Girl Scout, so that means I'm in my last 2 years of Girl Scouting. And my gold award is about increased driving safety and DUI prevention. And I'm doing this through educating drivers and non-drivers. And I'm specifically addressing that issue through this seminar. And today at the seminar, there are representatives from Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Insurance Brother in the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. I'm so glad you all came and are here to learn. So without further ado, we're going to start off with our representative from MEC.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me. I do just want to give an extra round of applause for Megan because it's not easy to organize these. So again, just good job, Megan. Awesome. Yes. So I know it's going to be like pretty short and sweet, but I hope it's helpful for you and it's maybe something that you can also bring outside of these walls to your peers and to help encourage them to make smart choices too. This is just meant for you to be able to get to point A to point B safely. We want to make sure that we're not talking down to you ever. We just want to make sure that your loved ones care about you, right? And they never want to receive that call, especially the sheriff's office knows how difficult that call is to make, or to knock on somebody's door and let them know that their loved one didn't make it because of something 100% preventable. So yeah, we're just gonna hope that this is as helpful to you as possible. We do go over a few substances. I do ask a lot of questions, so I hope that's okay. If you feel comfortable, you can answer, and then I'll give you a sticker. But yeah, so the first question is if anyone feels comfortable sharing like what that small percentage on alcoholic bottles is telling the consumer. There's usually a percentage, it's a tiny print, and it's informing the consumer about something. Anyone want to take a guess? Just like nutrition facts, right? And how you're supposed to, we're like taught how to read nutrition facts and how it's going to affect our body, right?
It's the percent of alcohol in the container.
Yeah, so that's the percentage of alcohol by volume in the container, right? So thank you. So this is just good to know because some folks, especially like underage drinking, they're not aware of what they're putting in their body, and it can be a very high percentage, and it can lead really quickly to alcohol poisoning. So we just want to be very careful of what how we're treating our bodies and our developing brains. So actually I'll just ask that too. What do you think some symptoms of alcohol poisoning looks like when someone's first experiencing that? Yeah.
Dizziness?
Yeah, dizziness. Did you read it on the next slide?
No.
Okay, good. I believe you.
I'm not that fast of a reader.
Yeah, good job. Hey, anyone else?
Throwing up?
Yes, throwing up isn't the number one like most common sign, yeah, of alcohol poisoning. And some people think they can just, oh, it's part of getting drunk, but that's a sign of our body and our factory saying we can't keep up with the amount of alcohol that's putting in our body. Yeah.
Maybe passing out.
Yes, yeah, passing out, losing consciousness. Yes, awesome. Did you have something else?
Blacking out.
Yes, similar to kind of like losing in and out of consciousness. So yeah, good job everybody. Anyone else? Yeah.
Visual impairment?
Yes, visual impairment for sure. Awesome. Oh, this one's stuck together. Anybody else? All right. So these are the other symptoms. Y'all really hit the nail with the hammer. Vomiting, I want to go back to vomiting because there's something crucial that we can help to prevent someone's life being saved. And so if we see that someone is throwing up, we can put them in the recovery position. And this is what the recovery position looks like. You're going to want to place their wrist on the bottom of their neck and then prop their knee on the other side to help their body not go forward or backwards. You can also use other items like around like chairs or pillows to prop them on their back so that they also don't fall backwards. And then you're going to stay with that person and not leave them alone. What's something that could happen if that person starts throwing up and they're also kind of in and out of consciousness, like you said, and their face up? What's something that could happen?
You could choke.
Yes, unfortunately there's been deaths where people have choked on their own vomit. And so this recovery position helps to prevent that from happening. And then also, what's the next really important thing that you would do in that situation?
Call the ambulance.
Absolutely, yes. You would call 911. You can describe as much information as possible, right? What they consumed, if they had any other prescription, if you know if they're on any other prescription drugs, you want to include that also. And then also an estimate of how many drinks they've consumed or if they have an underlying health condition too. And also if anything were to happen, that's never on you, right? That's never your burden to carry. But these are just things to know just in case we find ourselves in that situation. Alrighty. So a lot of times, which substance do people assume a DUI is? Is someone, sorry, that was confusing how I worded it. What's the most common substance that somebody thinks of when they hear driving under the influence?
Alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol. So what other ways do people's driving get impaired? Or what other ways do their driving behaviors are different?
Oh, you can go first.
You can go first, yeah.
Okay, over-the-counter drugs.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Prescription drugs, even some that maybe like our doctor has prescribed to us, which can be confusing because, yeah, it seems acceptable, for sure, yeah.
Would feeling sleepy count, like from overworking or anything?
Yeah, drowsiness is a really common factor in crashes also. Yeah, especially like big rig drivers. So when you drive, make sure to give that person extra cushion, right? Because you don't know how many hours they've been driving too. Good job. And then what other substances? Anybody else? Any other substances that might affect our driving? I heard you whisper it. You were right. Yeah, you're right. Which one said cannabis? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Right? How do you think, are someone's reactions when they have used cannabis, are someone's reactions very, very fast and very rapid? Or are they just a split second slower? Yeah, probably more than a split second, right? So they're slower reactions. What can happen when you're on the road and someone has slower reactions?
Your reaction time isn't as accurate.
For sure, yeah. And what do you know about if you're on a bicycle or skateboard or if you've ever driven? How fast do your reactions need to be? Lickety split, right? So it can be the difference of accidentally hitting a pedestrian or weaving in and out of your lanes, right? And then clipping somebody on the side. So obviously you never have to feel pressure to get into a vehicle. If you smell that they had just smoked, you can make up a lie, make up an excuse. You can say, I feel queasy and sick, I don't want to throw up in your car. Always make sure you can text a safe adult to get out of that situation if you ever find yourself in that situation. We did mention a little bit about prescription drugs, and then for the sake of time, I'll go ahead and skip over this, but making sure to read our instructions on those tiny that tiny font is very important to read. It tells you if you're able to drive or not able to operate a vehicle, which even includes like going on your e-bike or regular bicycle, your skateboard, right? It's always safe to just wait that out until you're through with that prescription drug, or having a different ride option too. Does that make sense? Okay. Alrighty. These are just some of the health risks that can come with underage drinking and substance abuse. Obviously, we want to protect our organs, right? And so being very aware of what we're consuming in our body. Our brain is developing and doing amazing things. So what age is our brain fully developed? 25, yeah, 25. So hopefully we're producing healthy cells in there. Are DUIs cheap?
No.
No, right? The sheriff's office can definitely let you know too that DUIs are not cheap. What depends on if someone has like, whether if a DUI is like $3,000 or like endless amounts of payments through their whole life? What depends? If it's like on the cheaper side or if it's like, let's say like $22,000.
If you cause damage.
Yeah, different causes of damage, right? Because is it different between if someone were to cause property damage on like maybe like a electric pole versus someone like killing a family of 4, right? So even though those are two very drastic, it's still 100% preventable, so never risking that ever. Right? And so there's legal consequences. Also, you're responsible for all the fees. So possibly their medical expenses, right? And then also getting your car back from the impound, and then your insurance won't cover it because it's a criminal, right? So it's not something that's an accident, right? It's a conscious decision. Let's see. So yeah, so there's ways that we can prevent this from happening. Obviously, that's why we're having this seminar. And so if you ever feel unsafe in a situation, always making sure to be able to contact that person to pick you up, right? You don't ever have to feel pressured to get into a vehicle that you're like unsure about, or there's something in your instinct telling you something's off. You know your instinct, right? And it's there for a reason. So making sure to contact that person if you don't feel comfortable. Being aware of your surroundings, getting home safely, and then don't be afraid to call 911 in an emergency. Even if there's something illegal going on at that place, wherever you're at, you're protected by the Good Samaritan law. So you can still call and let them know exactly what's happening. You won't get prosecuted legally. Worst that they could do is maybe like drop you off. Would be maybe like ask who's 18 and like drop them off at
the
the
main
legal
concern
guardian.
is safety before enforcing the law. It's making sure kids get home safe.
Exactly. Yeah. Hear that? Perfect. That's reassuring. Cool. So yeah, always call 911 because again, you could possibly save a life versus maybe getting in trouble for a week or something. So always make sure to call. For the sake of time, we're going to skip a couple of these, and then we're going to share our stories and then sum everything up. So our first story is Jed. So after a night of drinking, Jed's friend wanted to drive home. Jed couldn't convince his friend not to drive, so he hopped into the car to try and help and tell him to not drive. Instead, the car crashed, and Jed had passed away, but his friend survived. So this again is just to tell you that even though Jed didn't inherently do anything wrong, because he was trying to advocate for his friend and he cares about his friend, you always have to prioritize your own safety. Even if that means your friend isn't listening, you can't risk it, because once you're in that vehicle, you have no control over the consequences, right? Only the driver does. So you're kind of giving up that control to the driver. So we just want to make sure you can avoid that, and you're not a bad friend if you're like, okay, I need to prioritize my own safety. You can also report them because it could be maybe saving their life also. So even if you do report them and they might like say you lose trust with them, it's still the better thing for them, because what if his friend ended up driving into a wall and like him passing away also. So. And then Cole's last words to his mom were, "I love you," before he went down the road to a friend's house. An adult in the crowd who had been drinking and taking drugs offered Cole, who was alcohol-free, a ride in their truck. They both never made it home, right? So again, not trusting strangers with our lives, right? And then not saying this is Cole's fault ever, but again, all adults are not safe. Make sure you know you're safe adults that you trust too. This one was actually a local one. So Cole was out of Simi Valley, and he was asked to go for a ride around Christmas in 2023. He was only 23 years old. The driver had been day drinking and asked Cole if he wanted to go for a drive. He really liked fixing up old cars, and that was one of his hobbies. And the family friend also liked fixing up old cars. So even though he had been drinking, he asked Cole if he wanted to go for a drive in Toba Canyon, and then they ended up going for the drive, and then Cole ended up passing away, and then the driver survived. So again, we gotta advocate for our safety, because Cole should be here. There's no reason why Cole shouldn't have. It's 100% preventable. All right, never feel pressure to ride with an impaired driver. Again, I'll repeat it until I'm red in the face. Always feel free to call 911 if you feel like something's off. Find a safe ride home, or call your legal guardian to pick you up. They'd much rather have that instead of a different call, right? If you feel like you would like to earn community service hours, we offer volunteers community service hours for like projects that we work on. It could include going to like checkpoints with me, or it could include going to like undercover for alcohol decoy, like minor decoy, where you try to see if the gas stations are following their liquor license. Try to go buy alcohol from the gas station And yeah, it's really fun. But yeah, also there's less intense the projects than that. So if you're like, whoa, what the heck, I'm not trying to get thrown in there. There's also other stuff you can do, like creative writing or poetry, or helping our social media and stuff. So feel free to sign up if you want. I can also leave some of my cards here. But thank you so much for having us. And my name is Victoria, so if you have any questions, you can email me. Yeah, thank you so much.
So I work for Ventura County Sheriff's Department. I'm here in Moorpark, and I'm in our traffic bureau. So you might see me any day of the week pulling over cars all over LA Avenue, but really all over the city. I pull over a lot of trucks. If you see trucks stopped, that's probably me. We do a lot of traffic enforcement. My daughter, who is 16, got her license this year, and she started asking me a lot of questions. Would you stop somebody for this? And would you stop somebody for this? And some of the questions are like, do you stop people and give them tickets for being on their cell phone? And I say, yes, I do. And I will stop people just for not wearing their seatbelt. If I see somebody not wearing their seatbelt, and I think, oh, come on, that's really like petty or something like that. But when I got into law enforcement, I started learning a lot of things. And one of the things I learned is, when you think about police, what's one of the main things you think what cops do? What do they do? What's like the big thing? When you're kids, you play cops and robbers. You grow up, what do cops do?
Enforce the law.
They enforce the law. But in a very general sense, what do? What's that? We catch the bad guys, right? We go catch the bad guys. Because we're scared of the bad guys, because the bad guys might cause us harm, right? So if you think about all of the bad guys and all of the harm that they cause and the lives that they take, those are the things that scare us, right? Those are the things where you don't want to be out too late. You don't want to be in the wrong place. You want to know who you're with. But all of you participated today in one of the most dangerous activities that you'll ever participate in your life when you drove here. So I have one visual that I'll show you. It looks like Pac-Man. Who's ever played Pac-Man? It's an old one, but a good one. I blocked it out so you could guess. One of these represents all the deaths in 2024 in the United States from violent crime. And one of these represents all the deaths in 2024 caused by traffic collisions. Which one do you think is the traffic collision? The Pac-Man. Yeah. There's about 3 times as many deaths, or 2 times as many deaths by vehicles as there are by the bad guys. So when you think about that, you're much more likely to get injured or killed in a traffic collision than you are by a bad guy. So we want to make driving as safe as possible. A third of these are all caused by DUI drivers. So if we could stop DUI drivers, we could already cut out a third of these traffic-related deaths. So who knows, who has their license? Of the kids in here, who has their license? 1, 2, 3,
Does a permit count?
4. Okay, permit counts, you studied for it. Who wants to get a license? Okay, so when you guys start getting your license, what do you learn about alcohol? What is the legal limit for somebody who is under 21? The legal limit of alcohol. Sorry, I don't have stickers, but you can still raise your hand.
You can use mine.
Shouldn't it be just 0?
0. If you are under 21, the legal amount of alcohol is 0%. Just one drink and you are violating the alcohol laws. Okay? So what is if you are 21 and over...
You're taking my slides, man.
She took all mine, so I had to move down the road here.
We should have collaborated.
If you are 21 and over, what is the legal limit for alcohol?
0.08.
Who said 0.08? This is a trick question.
Also 0? Yeah.
Okay, also 0. Anybody else have another guess? Any other guesses? Okay, we're going to go with maybe it's 0, maybe it's 0.08. Here's why it's a trick question. First of all, let me back up. Who knows what this stands for? 0.08.
How much alcohol is in your blood?
Yes, we call it the BAC. It's blood alcohol concentration. So how much alcohol is in your blood? So this is 0.08% of your blood concentration is now alcohol, and that's what's going to your brain, and your brain doesn't get as much oxygen, and so you start getting dizzy, and you lose your balance, and you do different funny things. So the misnomer that we have is that there's a legal limit. Can you get a DUI at a 0.07?
Yep.
Yes. Can you get a DUI at a 0.05?
Yes.
Yes. Can you get a DUI at a 0.04?
Yes.
Yes, you can. So actually, if you're a commercial driver, the legal limit is 0.04, and you get a DUI.
Let me scratch another one off my list.
Okay. So the difference is that if you are 21 and older, you're not a commercial driver, 0.00 to 0.04, the law says we are going to basically say you're not impaired. Okay? So this is, I wouldn't say this is the safe zone, but in terms of getting arrested, this is probably the safe zone. But how about if you get in a crash and somebody gets hurt or killed? What's the first thing they're going to do?
Check your BAC.
They're going to take some blood, and they're going to say, oh, you were a 0.04, you were drinking. And now it's up to attorneys and insurance companies and judges to figure out how impaired were you. If you're just driving down the road and I see you go like this, but you're really on your cell phone, so you're not swerving because you're drunk, but I stop you and I end up checking your BAC level, I'm not going to arrest you in this section, or in these levels, right? But that doesn't mean it's a safe level, okay? So just keep that in mind. From over 0.04 all the way to 0.07, the law says you very well might be impaired, but it's up to me to prove that you're impaired. So that's why we have you do all these different tests and do the hokey pokey, and then we decide, were you able to do it correctly or not? Are you impaired? The law says that anything over 0.08, we just automatically assume 0.08 and higher, you are impaired. There's not a question. The law says you are impaired. So that's why people call it the legal limit, but it's not really a legal limit. So how many of you guys have had your life in some way affected by a DUI? Doesn't have to be your own. You don't have to volunteer information. But has anybody had their life affected or know somebody who's had their life affected by a DUI? A couple people. Okay, a couple people in this room. So when I was in my early 20s, I had a friend who died in a DUI crash. He was driving all by himself, and he was the DUI driver. Here's the sad part, and so I want you to keep in mind, I was going to talk about different ways you can get a DUI. You can get a DUI drinking cough syrup, right? You have a cough, you drink cough syrup. You might have a cough syrup that says right in here, do not operate a motor vehicle after you're drinking the cough syrup, right? If that substance causes you, we used to call it drunk driving, but it's really not drunk driving, it's impaired driving, right? So the law says that anything that causes you to be impaired could be a violation, okay? So we're talking those numbers, we're just looking at BAC level, blood alcohol concentration, but anything that causes you to be impaired could cause you to be a DUI driver. So my friend was at a party, he was over 21, so it was legal for him to drink. He was drinking with all of our friends. I wasn't there, thankfully, but all of our friends, the whole friend group was there. They're all pretty responsible people. They're not people that like to break the law, they're not people that like to get into trouble, but they had alcohol at the party and they were drinking and having just an afternoon thing. Well, at some point he starts saying goodbyes, I'm ready to leave, I'm ready to leave. They took his keys. They said, you are not okay to drive. They took his keys and they made him wait for, about an hour. They thought, well, if he stays here for about an hour, he should be okay. He convinced them, after an hour, to give his keys back. In other words, he demonstrated to them, I'm okay to drive. Now, are they thinking clearly also? No, because they're all drinking. So they're impaired also. So it's one impaired person telling another impaired person, I'm not as impaired as you think I'm impaired, but they're impaired, so they can't really tell how impaired you are, right? So they gave the keys back to him, and he drove home. He crashed into a tree at over 100 miles an hour, split his car in half, and that was the end of my friend. They, of course, did a toxicology report. They looked at his blood and said, how intoxicated was he? His BAC level, remember, the legal limit, as we call it, even though it's not, is 0.08%. His BAC level came back 0.50. Most people at 0.50 would be dead. Usually if you're a 0.3, you're on the floor, you can't move, you're unconscious, and we're calling the ambulance. He was a 0.50, and he convinced his friends that he wasn't drunk.
And that was after an hour wait.
That was after 1 hour. So he was higher than this. He had a very high tolerance for alcohol. Most people, like I said, would be dead with this amount of alcohol in his system. He was walking, talking, joking, and driving. And they gave the keys back. Now imagine not just the experience of losing one of your best friends, but imagine being the person that gave the keys back to him and said, okay, you waited, you're good, I believe you. My friends had a very, very hard time getting over the fact that they, as a group, let him drive away because they felt some responsibility for that. So, all of this to say, I'll wrap it up here, all of this to say that drunk driving and staying safe from drunk driving and keeping other people safe from drunk driving or impaired driving isn't just on you to say, I'm not going to drink or I'll be the designated driver. That's a huge, huge thing. But it's also to recognize my friend is not safe to drive. I don't care if you're mad at me, which they won't be, because guess what? They're not going to remember in the morning. Right? It's like wrestle the keys out of their hands. Go slash their tires. I don't care. Like, if you think about it, if you let your friend that you know is impaired drive, and they get hurt or hurt somebody else or hurt one of your friends, you're going to feel some responsibility for that, and that's going to go with you for a long time. So it's not just up to us to keep ourselves safe, but also to keep the people around us safe. And if every relationship has some rocky times, and what does that do? It makes your relationship stronger. So just think about it like you care about your friend enough to not let them do something that's going to hurt them. Any questions?
How long ago would you have to wait if you were drunk, or would you just have to call for a ride home?
That is a very good question. I am being put to the test right now, and if my memory serves me correctly, which it doesn't always serve me correctly, but if my memory serves me correctly, the average person is going to metabolize 0.02% BAC level per hour. So let's say that you were a 0.08. If you had to get back to 0, how many hours do you have to wait and drink nothing? 4 hours. So if you were, my friend, you're a 0.50, he was a 0.52. So this has happened. Sometimes I'll pull somebody over at 8 a.m. and I go talk to them and I smell alcohol as soon as they start talking. And they say, I haven't had anything to drink. I slept all night. Well, yeah, that's true, but they stayed up till 11 p.m. drinking from 8 to 11, and when they went to sleep, their BAC level was so high that when they woke up to go to work in the morning, they were still at 0.07, still 0.08, right? Because not enough alcohol had metabolized out of their system. So they think, okay, I stopped drinking, I'm being responsible, I drank at home, I went to sleep, I had some food, I took a cold shower, I did all that stuff, and then I drove to work drunk at 8 a.m. in the morning. But they don't think they're drunk because of all the things that have happened, right? So it's good to understand these things. It's also good to be able to know how to test yourself or just recognize, but what's the safest plan of action?
Don't drive.
Don't drive, just don't drive. And these days, these days there's just so many options. When I was growing up, it was like taxi, I don't have any money. Walk, that's not fun. Bike, okay, I could bike. But now it's like we've got Uber. I think it's much more common that parents are willing to pick up their kids or give people rides. So don't hesitate to ask. It's not worth trying to avoid a conflict and ending up with somebody dead. Just There might be some conflict, but it's worth it. It's worth it to save a life. Any other questions?
I know it probably depends on what drink it is, but how many drinks would it take to get to 0 point?
That is a good question. It does depend a little bit on, like male and female is different a little bit because of body mass, right? But there are standard drinks sizes. But if you think about, if you go to like, even on the back, or like when you get your registration for your car, it even has a chart in there that tells you BAC levels and how many drinks get you there. But that's all based off of standardized drink sizes. Now, if you go to a party, do you think they're pouring you a standard drink? No, what are they doing? Vodka and some lemon. Here you go, right? Even when you go to the bar, there's standard beer size. Somebody might say, I've only had 2 beers. Well, a standard beer size for drinking is 5% alcohol by volume, 12-ounce beer, okay? Now, if you go to a brewery and you get 1 beer, you're getting usually a 16-ounce beer, and maybe you like IPAs, which are darker beers, and those could be 8, 9% alcohol, right? So 2 beers is really like maybe, 3.5, 4 beers on your standard scale. So you just have to be aware of that. It's great. They even make little breathalyzers now that you can take. I think it's a really good idea as a young person to, if you start drinking, some people choose not to, but once you're of a legal age and you have some drinks, it's a good idea to realize, okay, this is how drinks make me feel. Now, let me test myself and see where I'm at. Not to say, oh, I'm under an 08, okay, I can drive, right? But just realize, okay, after 1 drink, this is where I'm at. After 2 drinks, this is where I'm at. And you can kind of learn to feel your body like I know for myself, I only ever have 2 drinks. 2 drinks, and I would never really want to have more than that, because after that, I don't like the way I feel. I know that I'm not safe to drive. I have kids, so I know that I could have to drive at any minute, right? My kids could call me and say, Dad, I need help. And I gotta get in the car. I can't be like, oh, sorry, I gotta sit here for, let me see, 3 hours, and then I'll be on my way, right? I have to be able to respond to an emergency, help somebody out. So I have to, even when I choose to drink, always be able to drive. So I know for me, 2 drinks is the max I will ever have. So, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna turn it over. Oh, you have one more?
You say your friend had a high tolerance to alcohol, but you get somebody that's really frail, they could actually be impaired at a 0-1.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I do know people that they literally, I don't know if they have an allergy to alcohol or what, but if they have a sip, they're acting like they've had 3 or 4 or 5 drinks, right? So different people do, in terms of what their actual BAC level is one thing. Impairment can happen at very low levels. That's why people drink, right? Why do you drink? Not because you're thirsty, you drink because you want to feel something, most people.
Have you, usually you look at the eyes and do all the other testing. Have you ever had somebody that's uncoordinated like I am that can't do it sober?
Yeah, it usually has more to do with age or some sort of injury. But generally under 60, most people can complete the test sober. However, some people, especially if they're young and athletic, they'll be very good at the tests, even if they are intoxicated. But one thing we really rely heavily upon is the eyes, because the eyes is not something you can get better at. It's not one of your, losing the word here. You can't consciously control your eyes' reaction, right? Your eyes are like the key, what do they say, the window to your soul, right?
So that's the biggest thing that you look at.
That's the biggest one. I can look at somebody's eyes, and if they refuse to do all the tests, I can say, okay, well, you're under the influence of alcohol based on my assessment, and I'm going to, and I've never been wrong. So in all the DUI arrests that I've made, when somebody says, I didn't even do any tests, well, we ended up taking your blood, and we were never wrong on our assessment, even just from looking at somebody's eyes very quickly sometimes. So yeah, if you learn to look at someone's eyes, you can tell very quickly.
And following directions.
Thank you, Van Gundy, and now we have Mr. Daniel Groff from Insurance Brokers West in Moorpark.
I'll make this kind of quick as well, since some of my information was taken. But how many DUI arrests do you guys think happened in California last year?
Over 10,000.
Anybody else? So last year, on average, it's about 100,000 a year. So it's a major contributor to fatalities and accidents as well. So, and we'll use numbers for just Ventura County for just this last weekend. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll use California for just this last weekend, Thanksgiving weekend. These are highway patrol numbers. They have their maximum enforcement period, which is Thursday morning, early morning, till Sunday night, midnight. So in California, this year alone, for that weekend, was 1,113 DUI arrests. One weekend. We talked about experiences. About 15 years ago, a kid I used to babysit when I was little was at a party for Thanksgiving after dinner. They had dinner with their family. Him and his girlfriend and her brother were at this party. They'd been drinking. He was the soberest one to drive home. And on the way home, he lived in here in Ventura County. He crashed the truck. And not only did he kill his best friend, but his girlfriend. To this day, talk about having things that you don't get to have. He can never own a house. He'll never have a good job because everything is garnished for the rest of his life until he can pay back these exorbitant amounts that he lost in a lawsuit after he got out of jail for being in jail for a while. So in 2023, we had 1,047 that same weekend, so we went up this year, which is not a good sign. Thanksgiving weekend this year in California, we had 22 fatalities, and last year we had 27 in one weekend from drunk driving. Ventura County had 23 DUI arrests this weekend, past weekend, and we had 0 fatalities. The DUI penalties in California, the criminal penalties are fines, jail time, mandatory education program, suspension or revocation of driver's license. You will lose your license automatically for 30 days. If you're lucky, the judge will give it back to you on a provisional situation for you to go to and from work only. And they will monitor that. If Officer Van Gundy pulls you over and it's 8 o'clock at night and you're not supposed to be off, you got off work at 5, it's a violation. You could go back with him to the courthouse and have a good time. Long-term effects, it's on your criminal record, it's there. It increases your insurance rates a lot. And it's not only for a short period of time, a DUI stays on your record for your insurance for a period of 10 years from your conviction date, not from your cite date. Every other ticket is from the date you get your ticket. I get a speeding ticket on January 1st, 3 years later, it's off my record. I get a DUI, I get arrested, and I fight it, and Officer Van Gundy goes to court, and you've seen him, that'll go 2 years. They'll fight him 2-3 years, and they finally, it's convicted. Now that 10-year clock starts that day. So fighting is not the best thing, especially in Ventura County, because I think we have like a 99.9% conviction rate in Ventura County for DUIs. I get clients call me all the time, something happened, and I'm like, what'd you do? And they're like, I got it pulled over and I'm gonna get a DUI and I've been to court and I'll get convicted soon, but I'm gonna fight it. I'm like, where did you get it? I got it in El Segundo, I got it in San Diego, I got it in Santa Barbara. I'm like, okay, let me know how it goes. I got it in Ventura County. I'm like, don't waste your money on an attorney. Go there, say, I'm sorry, plead it and be done. Because you're not gonna win. It's very hard to win in Ventura County. We have a pretty much a zero tolerance in Ventura County for DUIs. Every district attorney I've met that we've had since, I go back to Bradbury, probably has always been really tough on them. Part of the insurance implications, once you get a DUI and you're convicted, before you get your license back, you have to get what's called an SR-22. It's a state reporting file form that you have to file with your insurance company that files with the department, with the DMV. And if you miss your payment by 1 day, your license is revoked that day immediately. So a normal person can let their insurance lapse. Sometimes they forget about it. I get it all the time. Oh man, I missed my payment. I haven't had insurance for 3 weeks. Their license didn't get suspended or anything else. We can put it back on. But if you have a DUI on your record or reckless, that's an SR1P. It's a little bit different. You have to go back to the DMV and get your license back again because they've already taken it away. Because the minute that first day you missed it, that's the requirement from the insurance company. You have to report it to the DMV immediately that you missed your payment. So you have to keep that in place. You'll need that SR-22 for a minimum of 3 years, consistently. If it lapses 1 day, at a 1.5 years, it starts all over again, 3 years. Miss it again in 2 years, it starts again. So you gotta keep that for 3 years on your record. High-risk driver status, the DUI automatically places you in what's called California high risk, and you're considered a non-good driver for that period of 10 years I talked about from the conviction date. Insurers usually prefer carriers like Travelers, Hartford, Safeco, Mercury, CIG. They'll give you your SR22 for that first term that you're currently in, but at your renewal, they'll non-renew you and you'll have to go get insurance someplace else. And then you're going to be with usually a non-preferred carrier, Kemper, Infinity, there's a bunch of them out there, and you pay a lot more money, sometimes 2-3 times what you would normally be paying. And if you have family on your policy, it affects everybody on your policy's rate. So it's really not something you really want to be doing. Your premiums can increase 100-300% after the DUI conviction. The average cost of car insurance post-DUI for one person is about $4,000 a year. So it's really expensive. Additional costs. We don't really talk about it much, but the fines and legal fees are a minimum of $10,000 by the time you get through the courts. You got to go through the court process, you have to take alcohol school. Sometimes, depending on what the level of your alcohol was, they'll make you put an interlock device. I know you've probably seen those in cars, where every time you go ready to start your car, you have to blow into this machine in the car, or the car will not start. One thing that people aren't super smart about is it also records data in that, and it gets checked every so often. And if you try and blow into it, and you've had one beer, and it registers, or a little bit of cough syrup, you can violate your parole on that one too, because it'll give them the data report that there was alcohol at one time when you tried to start your car. So we had a client, I don't know if he was telling me the truth, he goes, I was sober, my girlfriend thought it'd be funny if she blew into the machine, and she had a drink, and now I'm in trouble. That's your fault for blowing your machine there. So you got to be careful on those things. That interlock device can be required. You could lose your job. I mean, if you have a job that requires driving, delivery person side, their insurance will go up drastically, and they're going to say, I'm sorry, you can't work for us anymore, you can be without a job. Alternatives to driving under the influence. Back when I was a kid, a million years ago when the dinosaurs were on the world, we had to either walk, ride a bike, ride a skateboard, call a taxi, try and get a taxi in Moorpark or Simi Valley even today. It's almost impossible. Nowadays you're lucky because you have this thing called Uber. I'm a parent of 4 children, and I've given an Uber app to each one of my kids, and I've told them that if you ever are in a situation that you need to ride home, if you had a drink, I'm not going to yell at you, use an Uber app. I will pay for it, we'll talk about it the next day. I'd rather you get home safe than something happening. So parents, if you don't have an Uber app for your kids, get them on an Uber app. Make sure you have that for them. Key takeaways, DUI significantly increases your insurance premiums for a very long time, and prevention is always the best financial decision to do, and the safety decision. As Officer Van Gundy said, there's nothing worse than to know that you affected somebody and somebody died. That's something you can't get back. Do I have any questions? Does anybody know what the color for Mothers Against Drunk Driving is? What's their sponsor color? Red.
I got a question.
How'd you know?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what was the statistic about how many arrests in California this year?
100,000.
100,000. Okay. Does anybody have a guess for somebody who gets stopped and arrested for DUI? On average, how many times has that person driven under the influence of alcohol before they got stopped?
A lot,
How many would you say?
over 1,000 times.
Okay, over 1,000. Well, that's pretty high. I'll say.
Over 100.
I'd say 250.
Okay. So the
Well,
statistic is.
I'm from the
It
Midwest.
depends on the age of the person.
So this
It
is.
don't count. He didn't say that. He said.
Sorry, I'm going to jump up here twice, but for the average person, they get stopped one time. For the average person, and this is, I think, based off of a lot of self-reporting, the average person has driven under the influence of alcohol 80 times for every one time they get stopped.
I think that's very low.
So if there are, so just going off of this statistic, if there are 100,000 arrests, just these people this year, how many times did they drive under the influence?
8 million.
8 million times they had an opportunity to kill somebody. So I'll just add to that also, I think young people are maybe a little bit afraid, maybe not, to use their phone while they're driving, because they don't like the ticket. But if you're driving behind somebody and you're like, whoa, what are they doing? Just call. Just pick up your phone and call and say, I think I might be following a drunk driver. And they're going to ask you what the car looks like, they're going to ask you the license plate, and they're going to ask you where you are and what direction they're going. And you don't have to follow them because we want you to stay safe, but I would say as long as you're going in the same direction they are, don't try to follow them. You don't want to get into a road rage thing or something like that. But hey, we're going the same direction, or we're on the freeway, they're right in front of you. I would just stay on the phone and just say, okay, we're still going on the freeway, now we're in Simi Valley, and they're going to send an officer to pull over that car. We get those calls all the time. Sometimes we catch them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're drunk, sometimes they're not. If they're not drunk, it's like, it took them 3 minutes. So definitely call.
And you'll see it a lot more at the holiday times. I hate to say it, but if you're driving around this time of year at night, 10 o'clock, when do most accidents happen?
At night.
At night. Why? Because the bars are closed. People are leaving, and I'm a partner in a restaurant, and we've trained our staff, if somebody's had too much to drink, call them a car. Call them a taxi, call them an Uber, call them something, have them call a friend, and make sure you're cutting them off, because you've got to make sure you're protecting what's out there. A life is too precious. So, well, thank you guys.
I want to say thank you to everyone who came, and I want to say thank you again to our presenters. I hope you will use this information and take it to heart and apply it out in the real world, and not just keep it here, because you're not driving a car here. But let's use it, and hopefully you'll never have to call someone who's driving incorrectly. So thank you.